Today on the show, you and I discuss Spaceforce and what it really means, the Clarinet Scholarship that was lost, and the lies that we choose to believe.
Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Let's go! Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born!
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
Have you ever spent much time with the lyrics of James Hetfield from Metallica? Are you a Metallica fan? Now, even if you're not necessarily a Metallica fan, you can sit down and look at sheets of his lyrics and go, wow, there's some interesting and profound things going on in a definitely tortured mind. James Hetfield, frontman, guitar player, kind of head honcho. Well, I think it's a constant and never-ending embittered power struggle between James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich with regard to who is actually the head honcho of Metallica, but he's sort of the guy in the band. And, well, his songwriting is really something else. He is a deeply introspective person, but the way he looks inward is a mirror to all of us outward. He's had some incredible musical and lyrical moments in Metallica. There's a song called Master of Puppets. If you're a Metallica fan, you obviously know it inside out and upside down. But there's a Metallica song called Master of Puppets, and it's a song that James Hetfield wrote back in the day about drugs and alcohol, and about how he saw them controlling everybody around him, how he saw them controlling the lives of the people that he knew that suffered from drug and alcohol addictions. And he said it was only years later that he realized in retrospect that he was writing that song about himself. I know, it's kind of some out there psychological stuff. The Unforgiven, a song about a kid that grows up being held down by all these different people that tell him what to do with his life, where to go, how to talk, dress, look, act, behave within society. The Unforgiven is an interesting one. There's a twist at the end. Because you hear the song Unforgiven and you hear it being about a guy that's held down and pressured by parents, teachers, authority figures, and society in general, and you think that the person that's unforgiven are those that held him down. But at the end you realize that it's an old man looking into the mirror, taking stock of his life, going, I never just lived my own life. I never fought back. I never became my own person. I allowed those people to hold me down. And for that reason, I myself am unforgiven. Like I said, some sort of deep and interesting stuff. And there's one song that sort of like springs to mind for me over and over again as you see what happens in the year 2018. And let's be real here, this has been going on in America and the world for a very, very long time. But you see what happens with regard to what people are willing to believe. And, well, I'm often reminded of the song Sad But True. I don't know if you're a Metallica fan, this might be going way over your head, but it remains an interesting one. Sad But True is sort of, I guess, a stunning statement on what it is people are willing to believe and what it is people are willing to do for the people that tell them, well, straight up lies. Apparently it was a song that James Hetfield was inspired to write when he was hanging around the house one day, flipping through the channels, and started watching televangelists on TV. And he was like, this can't be. This isn't really a thing. And I don't know, maybe he'd never spent much time watching televangelism and wasn't aware of the nature of it, but he was sitting there watching it, thinking, going, hold on just a cotton-picking freaking second. Hold on just a moment. There's this guy on TV, and he's telling people that are watching, that are spending their day watching this stuff, that if they send him their money, they're going to get into heaven faster. I mean, it's a time-honored tradition. The stones it takes for somebody to look other people in the face and say, you need to send me your money. I'm closer to God than you are. And if you send me your money, you're going to get into heaven faster. Or your soul might be saved. Who knows? You might not be about to get into heaven. You might be about to go to the other place, but there is redemption for you. And that redemption comes in the form of sending me your life savings so that you can help me buy a Learjet. Oh, we never talked about that one pastor, did we? I don't know. A pastor, probably not. Televangelist. The guy who's sort of collecting money so he can buy his third private jet. What does that say to you? Says it over and over again throughout the years. This guy who I'd never heard of before, he's not one of the big mega church pastors. He's not like a Jim Baker or Joe Osteen. By the way, I saw Joe Osteen fly commercial once. I bumped into him at an airport. Much shorter than you would think he would be. The Lord did not bless him with height. But it means that over the years, there have been people willing to buy into this myth that if you send some overly brill creamed schmo on television your money, that's going to help them buy water slides or mansions or private jets, and somehow this is going to make you get into heaven quicker. And James Hetfield saw that and he was like, that's sad but true. And like that, a Metallica classic was born. But it speaks to the nature of what people are willing to believe. Not so much because they're stupid, well, maybe they are stupid, but mostly because they're afraid. And there's a stunningly fine example of this happening this week.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So yeah, James Hetfield of Metallica, deep and interesting guy. And the lyrics to Sabatru keep running through my head of late. Sabatru, if you missed it, we were just talking about this. Sabatru is a song that was inspired by televangelism. James Hetfield was hanging around the house flipping channels one day, and he came across some sort of televangelist on screen and went, hold on a second. Let me understand this. I mean, I've always seen this stuff, but I've never really given it any thought. Let me try and wrap my head around this concept. This greasy idiot on screen is saying that he's got a closer relationship to God than everybody else, and therefore everyone should send him their money. Therefore, if people send them their money so he can go do, and I quote, God's work, it's going to help save their mortal freaking soul? Well, that's ridiculous. What sort of idiot would fall for it? Oh, wait. There's a lot of these people on, and there's a lot of people falling for it. There's a lot of people that are being bilked out of their life savings by these individuals who promise them salvation, who say that you might have screwed up in the past, but God forgives as long as you send me some cash so I can buy a Learjet or a mansion or build a water slide or whatever the hell the case may be, that whatever the hell the crooked televangelist is trying to do. And people fall for it over and over and over again. They have throughout history. And it's not just limited to America. It's not just limited to televangelism. Since the dawn of freaking time, there's probably been some guy that, or some girl that goes, hey, the big angry ball of fire up in the sky will come down and consume us all unless you give me, your piece of woolly mammoth that you just killed. I know this because I've got a closer relationship with a big fiery ball of yellow in the sky. There's been people using religion, faith, and the fear that it entails to bilk people out of their stuff since the dawn of time. And it's interesting. It's interesting because of the fact that it works over and over and over again. It's interesting the fact that we are logical creatures. We are if-then creatures. If you show us proof of something, we believe it. But that logic tends to be suspended in two important ways. One, when there's religion involved. Two, when there's politics involved. I guess the idea is when something feels out of your control, you'll do literally anything to feel like you've got some sort of influence over it. I mean, there's this idea that you don't know. You might not be going to heaven. You might burn for eternity in the fiery pits of hell with Satan himself spit roasting your butt. So you want to do everything you can to get good with God and go to the good place. So for that reason, you will suspend the logic that has taken you through your entirety of your life. And when you get ready to study for the final and check out, that common sense that started when you walked up to a stove, touched it as a kid, went, ow, that's hot. I'm not doing that again. That common sense, that demonstrative way of going through life and making decisions and conclusions that we all grew up with just goes out the window because religion, faith, the afterlife, eternity, this is the great unknown. And then with politics is an interesting one as well because, well, it involves the great unknown. It involves your life. the things that are important to you, losing them potentially, and being out of control. Politics, in a way, is very similar to religion because it's presented as a massive, massive thing that you, as one teeny tiny little person, have no power or influence over. You can't control what's going on in other countries. You can't control which countries hate us. You can't control the fact that we've made enemies all over the world and they might be coming for you. And in much the same way that religion deals with massive concepts and makes you feel like you're a tiny little cog in the machine that has no influence over any of them, politics does the same thing. These are big global worldly matters, and I'm a politician. Therefore, I am able to affect and change and influence these things in ways that you are not. So I can save you. It's just going to take your vote and probably some campaign finance money. So it's interesting, as James Hetfield pointed out, what people are willing to believe and how they're willing to act and how they're willing to be bilked out of things like savings and, personal dignity in order to protect themselves and the people that they love. So people are willing to buy into some ridiculous stuff. You and I talked about this on the show the other day. Jim Bakker, the guy who famously porked Jessica Hahn over and over and over again, while he was running the Praise the Lord network with his wife, Tammy Faye. He was shamed. He was ostracized. He was a sinner. He blew all of his credibility with God and his audience. And you would think that he would have slunk off, slithered away like the snake he is to live out his days in abject shame and hopefully abject poverty, having been stripped of all of his ill-gotten gains. No, right back up in the game. I don't know how or when it happened, but this is the guy we talked about on the show the other day, Jim Bakker, who is doing just fine selling like survival rations now, saying the end of days is coming. He's selling survivalist cabins in some little town, I think near the Appalachian Mountains. He's selling these like survivalist motorhome cabin things and sort of like reconstituted oatmeal-y type of apocalypse rations and selling them for a lot of money. And we talked about this the other day. And what boggles our mind is the fact that people buy into this stuff. People are willing to send him their money. People are willing to send him their life savings. But it comes out of fear. It comes out of a sense of lacking control. And it comes out of a willingness to believe anything that says, I can save you. And like I said, the example of this that we've seen in America this week is one of the most stunning things I've ever caught in my entire life. What are we talking about? Well, we are, of course, talking about going into space, and we'll get into that next.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So, you and I have been talking about what people are willing to believe from religious leaders and politicians. And it boggles our mind. And like I said, that lyric from James Hetfield of Metallica, the lyric to Sabbath True, the song written all about how people are willing to buy into the lies of a preacher or whoever the hell it is, some sort of cult of personality figure, in exchange for salvation, circumventing their logic, circumventing everything they've known about the world and the way it works because they're getting good with God or they're seeking some sort of salvation. We've been talking about this, and otherwise intelligent, normal, thoughtful people are willing to fall for the biggest line of hooey that you've ever heard in your life because they're scared. They want to believe in something. And I suppose That's sort of what we're talking about here today when we discuss Spaceforce. Yeah. Oh, man. And by the way, if Spaceforce came up at a different time, I think I would have been lickety-freaking split quick to sign up. As a kid, are you telling me I could go be a soldier in space? Spaceforce. Snappy little title. When it comes to defending America, it is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance in space. This is what Donald Trump said this past Monday, just gone by. I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process and to process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. It will be separate but equal to the Air Force. Before we came in, I will tell you, they didn't have such big plans for space. Now they have plans. Yeah. I mean, look, all right, we have to acknowledge that there might be a certain amount of jealousy and competition going on. Donald Trump has made his money here on Earth, building buildings that stand on the ground. That's sort of like the crux of the matter in many ways, that and the being a reality television star and all the above. And I don't think it's any great secret that he is more than a little jealous of the Jeff Bezoses of this world and the Elon Musks of this world. He's surrounded by these other billionaire businessmen that are now entering the space race privately. Elon Musk of SpaceX and Tesla, pursuing private space programs that could put Americans on Mars. And he dealt with that. He said, rich guys seem to like rockets. So all these rich guys that are dying for our real estate to launch their rockets, we won't charge you too much. Just go ahead. If you beat us to Mars, we'll be very happy and you'll be even more famous. As long as it's an American rich person, that's good. Okay? They can beat us. We'll save a little money and they can beat us, but we're taking full credit for it. Don't worry about it. Now, obviously, the idea of Donald Trump's Space Force is, of course, a comedic goldmine.
President Trump said yesterday he is seriously thinking of creating a sixth branch of the military called the Space Force. They'll patrol the distant reaches between him and Melania.
Fallon had to go too.
Did you see this during his speech in California? Trump talked about his idea for a new branch of the military. It sounded a little strange. Take a look at this.
We may even have a Space Force. We have the Air Force, we'll have the Space Force. Space Force.
Houston, he has a problem.
Trump wants to create a Space Force. He said that it would join the other branches of the military, like the Air Force, Army, Navy, and his personal favorite, the Paw Patrol. Later, reporters asked Trump who should lead this Space Force, and he said, that's easy, Buzz Lightyear.
And here's Seth making fun of Trump's idea for Space Force again.
President Trump yesterday proposed the idea of having a branch of the military called the Space Force. Space Force sounds like the knockoff action figures you got from your grandma on your birthday. Oh, thanks, Grandma. It's just what I asked for. Garth Nader and Ron Yolo.
And what would a recruitment commercial for Space Force sound like?
Space is a warfighting domain.
We want you to join Donald Trump's Space Force! He's seen all the movies and can make sweet laser noises with his own mouth. Donald Trump's Space Force!
Just like the land, air, and sea. Space Force.
Join Donald Trump's Space Force! And help build a wall around Earth to protect us from the worst Mars has to offer. See Uranus up close and personal.
That could happen.
And explore the black hole that is the president's mouth.
We have the Air Force, we'll have the Space Force.
Got it, Donald. It's a force, but in space. Space Force!
So what a great idea. Maybe we'll have to do that.
Oh, yeah, baby. It's happening.
We'll go with the Space Force, Space Force, the Space Force, Space Force.
We've lost all dignity on this planet, so why not take it galactic? Donald Trump's Space Force!
And what's interesting is if you listen to all the jokes and all the goofs and all the parodies, Donald Trump's actual announcement of a Space Force fits right in with him. Sounds absolutely ridiculous.
Very importantly, I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement. We are going to have the Air Force and we are going to have the Space Force, separate but equal. 1 year ago, I revived the National Space Council and put exactly the right man in charge, and that's our friend, Mike Pence. Feels very...
By the way, in case you missed that, separate but equal, if that seems unpleasant to you, it should. It's a reference to the Supreme Court decision that legalized racial segregation in 1896. But let's go on.
Strongly about this. And in December, I signed a historic directive that will return Americans to the moon for the first time since 1972, if you can believe that. This time, we will do more than plant our flag and leave our footprints. We will establish a long-term presence, expand our economy, and build the foundation for an eventual mission to Mars, which is actually going to happen very quickly. And, you know, I've always said that rich guys seem to like rockets. So all of those rich guys that are dying for our real estate to launch their rockets, we won't charge you too much. Just go ahead. If you beat us to Mars, we'll be very happy and you'll be even more famous.
Yeah, so, like I said, the actual presidential account of what Space Force will entail, almost as hilarious as the parodies, almost as undiscernible as the parodies. And here's what I don't like about this. Here's what I don't like about the Americans' willingness to fall hook, line, and sinker for this situation. Do we know that Space Force is a joke, a goof, a con, a scam, a distraction? Yeah, sure, absolutely we do. And by the way, what a fantastic distraction it is. I mean, compare it to the accountability necessary of doing things like, getting electricity back to Puerto Rico. I mean, either the light goes on or it doesn't. Either they've got water or they don't. That's something that's really, really sort of easy to look into and discern whether or not anything meaningful has been done. But Space Force, we're going to become a greater military and economic power in space. What does that look like? Nobody knows what the hell that looks like. So it's really easy to go, oh, we're making tremendous strides in space. And I can tell you they're happening very quickly, I can tell you. Nobody knows what the hell that looks like. And for that reason, it's a fantastic smokescreen. Meaning, you don't have to really do anything of note. There needs to be no accountability whatsoever. You could be sitting there twiddling your thumbs, telling the American public that their tax dollars are being very well spent as we make huge strides in space, and nobody would know the difference because nobody knows what that would look like. And if we did decide to monitor it, it's not as easy as sending some sort of news channel to Puerto Rico to see what's going on with the lights and the water. You know, what are we going to do? Sit there with our binoculars pointed to the sky, waiting for some sort of sign that our government is taking our hard-earned tax dollars and doing something meaningful with them that changes our life in any way, shape, or form? No. It's brilliant. And it's brilliant in that it falls straight into that category that we were talking about earlier. People feel so out of control in 2018. People have felt out of control throughout history. That's why they've turned to charlatans. Charlatans in the political world, charlatans in the religious world, looking for some sort of salvation. You feel out of control. You feel weak. You feel at the effect of the way you're going through the world. And therefore, you look to someone that says, put your faith in me. I've got control over a situation that you don't, and I can help things happen for you that are going to make meaningful change in your life. You're going to get into heaven. Your neighborhood will become safer. You won't have to be so scared. Just vote for me and send me your money. And this is the ultimate. This is the ultimate scheme of a charlatan. Space Force. Now, by the way, I think we should be in space. I think we should be doing meaningful things in space. I think it is something that bears real inspection in terms of what could be possible, what this would mean for America, what this would mean for humanity if we did something meaningful in space. But if you think that the announcement of Space Force is coming out at a time where, well, there's a bunch of kids being kept in very controversial situations on the border. There are veterans who are forced to crowdfund their medical treatments. There is a genuine failure to do anything meaningful to stop mass shootings or the opioid epidemic. If you think these things are happening right around the time that Space Force has been announced and it's not a coincidence, well, you're obviously wrong. And I think everybody realizes that. Everybody realizes that it's a joke, it's a goof, it's a distraction. But I think the part that bothers me is that people are falling for it. People are falling for it, not necessarily in the way that a lot of folks are. I mean, there's genuinely a lot of people. Those same people that are willing to spend all sorts of money on Jim Baker's survivalist rations. Those same people that are willing to send some sort of pastor all their life savings so that he can fly around in a third jet. These people might actually buy into the idea of Space Force being the real deal. But there's a lot of us that go, this is just silly. This is just a silly distraction. Now let's have some fun with it. Let's laugh at it. Let's joke about it. Let's see what late night television hosts have to say about it. And by the way, comedic goldmine. And what else is a late night TV host going to do? They're going to yuck it up. And why wouldn't you? That's their job. But in doing all of these things, we are allowing ourselves to be distracted, not necessarily by the lie that we're believing, because, a lot of us are too smart to believe it, but by the laughter and the hilarity and the what the hell is that all about? And I think this is where we have to start giving Donald Trump a little bit more credit than maybe we've been giving him in the past. Because does this sound ridiculous? Yeah, it absolutely sounds ridiculous. Does he know it sounds ridiculous coming out of his mouth? Yeah, he knows it sounds ridiculous coming out of his mouth. Does he know that people are going to be talking about this for the next 5 of the 24-hour news cycles? Yeah, absolutely he does. Does he know that every sort of hack comedian is going to be working on their Spaceforce bits? Yep, 100 million%. Does he think people believe him? No. But he knows. He knows it's an incredible distractionary tactic, because it's not so much that people are going to buy into it, it's that we're going to spend the next couple days going, what the hell did he just say? That's utterly ridiculous. It's like James Hetfield of Metallica said. Sad but true. There's these folks that'll say and do whatever the hell it takes to part you from your money, to get their way, to stay alive in the polls for the next 10 minutes. People that will offer you some sort of salvation, people that will offer you distraction, people that will fob you off with lies and untruths and half-truths that are so easy to see through, but because we feel out of control, we're willing to accept it. We're willing to buy into it. Don't feel out of control. Don't ever feel like you're living life at the effect. I've said it time and time again. You and I have talked about this over and over again. You're going to feel small. You're going to feel insignificant in the face of it all. Bazillions of tax dollars being spent on going to Mars. How much more out of touch could you feel with something than that? You don't know anything about space travel. You don't know anything about any of that. So it's easy to go, the American political process is busy sending rockets to Mars and talking about this sort of stuff. What does this mean for me? This means, my friend, that you control the shape of your own life every single day. You have the power to get up in the morning and write your own story. You have the power to decide how your day goes. You have the power to decide how you're going to treat the people around you. You're going to have the power to decide how you look at things that come your way. And in recognizing that power that you have within yourself every single day is how you free yourself from the hold of the charlatans that run the freaking world.
Streets most every day, you're waiting to get washed away. Radio 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
You know, it sort of makes sense that in the week where Space Force was announced, people are talking about Star-Lord for president. Chris Pratt unveiled rules for the next generation at the MTV Movie and TV Awards, and because it was vaguely inspirational and he did a good job at it, now people are like, I wonder if he could run for president. But, well, he won the Generation Award at the MTV Movie and TV Awards, so he gave this list of 9 rules for the next generation to follow, and it turned out to be a pretty awesome list. And you know what? Frankly, when it comes to life coaching, you could do a lot worse. Have a listen.
This is what I call 9 rules from Chris Pratt, Generation Award winner. Number 1, breathe. Number 2, you have a soul. Be careful with it. Number 3, don't be a turd. Number 4, when giving a dog medicine, put the medicine in a little piece of hamburger, they won't even know they're eating medicine. Number 5, doesn't matter what it is, earn it. Number 6, God is real. Number 7, if you have to poop at a party, lock the door, sit down, get all the pee out first, and then once all the pee's done, poop, flush, boom. Just trust me, it's science. Number 8, learn to pray. And finally, number 9, nobody is perfect, but there is a powerful force that designed you that way. And if you're willing to accept that, you will have grace. And grace is a gift. And like the freedom that we enjoy in this country, that grace was paid for with somebody else's blood. Do not forget it. Don't take it for granted.
Like I said, you could go a lot worse when it comes to good advice. You could go a lot worse when you're taking someone's advice or looking at somebody who is going to be a bit of a life coach. But you know what? Chris Pratt, Star-Lord. Star-Lord for president is what we've heard over and over again. And maybe it's serious, maybe it isn't. But look, ever since Donald Trump became president of these United States of America and leader of the free world, and we realize that you don't necessarily have to have been a career politician to be the most powerful person on the planet, every time anyone says something even vaguely inspiring, people are clamoring, going, when are you running for office? Kim Kardashian. If you didn't already believe we're living in bizarre world, then you haven't been paying attention to what's been going on with Kim Kardashian. Lately, she's been working with the White House as the voice and face of criminal justice reform and being named one of the most influential people by Time magazine. Whether you agree with it or not, she's about 9/10 of the way to being legit. She's even besties with Van Jones from CNN, and in a new interview with him, she talked about starting a career in law. That led to Van Jones asking Kim if she would ever run for office. She doesn't seem to be going anywhere near that headspace, but she says, I guess never say never. This is the day and age we're living in. Star-Lord for president. Kim Kardashian for governor. Oprah Winfrey for Lord High Commander of the freaking universe. And what does that say to you? Yeah, it does say that we're living in a bizarre world. Yeah, it does. But it also says that we're kind of desperate. We kind of feel rudderless. We feel leaderless. We don't have anybody in charge that makes people feel secure and makes people feel safe. Donald Trump, even if you're a Donald Trump supporter, there's a very good chance you don't feel secure and safe because the whole platform that he ran on was one of chaos. The whole platform that every politician runs on in this day and age is something is coming for your way of life and I'm here to protect you from it. And in that lies fear. And so it really kind of doesn't matter which side of the political fence you fall down on. We're all looking for leaders. We're all looking for saviors. We're all looking for literally anything. It's like a baseball team that's not doing that great. When my Mets are kicking ass and taking names, do I look at the AA and single A farm systems and go, who could we bring up that could save us? Who can pitch? Who can hit? Who can get on base? Who can hold runners on? I don't care when the Mets are winning. When I feel good about where they're going and what they're doing, none of that even enters into my mind. But when things start to go badly, when I think they're going to sell the team, when I think that this losing streak will never end, that's when I start pouring through the farm system. That's when I start looking at other teams that are doing badly, going like, maybe we could trade for Manny Machado. That's where we are right now in America. We're looking at literally anything and anyone. We're looking at Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, and Star-Lord Chris Pratt, who, by the way, I have all the time in the world for. I think he's hilarious. He's made me laugh. And, the advice that he doled out to future generations, that was good stuff. But just because he had a vaguely inspiring public moment, people are clamoring to him going, that could be our next leader. He seems presidential. The Rock. Tom Hanks. People clinging on to these ideas of people that seem okay. Like they seem like an okay person. Maybe they could be in charge. They seem okay. They seem like good. They've achieved things. And it just is indicative to me that we are looking in the wrong places for our senses of security. We talked about it before. In the face of things like Spaceforce and a massive mission to Mars style space program that's being launched by our president, it's easy to feel small and insignificant and like you're completely out of control. But that insecurity that makes you look to actors and television hosts and people that have no experience and are unbelievable Hail Mary long shots at feeling like everything's going to be okay. That will never come from a politician. That will never come from an elected official. Your idea, your sense of safety, your sense that things are going to work out, that things are going to be okay, that begins and ends with you. And the sooner you and I realize that and act on that every single day, the better off we'll be, and the sooner we'll get our lives back.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So, you and I spent a good portion of today talking about lies, untruths, fibs, half-truths that we choose to believe because they make us feel better in some way, shape, or form. Distractionary tactics used by politicians to shirk responsibility and accountability. Lies that preachers tell about how we're going to get into heaven if we do what the hell they tell us to do. Lies that politicians tell about what they're going to do when they get elected. Distractionary lies that presidents throughout the history of the U.S. presidency have told to make us look the other way. And I'm not just talking about Donald Trump's Space Force. This is a tradition as old as the presidency itself. This is a tradition that knows no specific party. I'll give you a perfect example. My father has lived for the past 15 or so years in Kosovo. And he was telling me, you know who they love in Kosovo? Americans, unbelievably popular in that part of former war-torn Yugoslavia. And a big part of the reason is because of Bill Clinton. You know that in Kosovo, there's a place called Bill Clinton Square? Yeah, Big Bubba, very popular. I think there's even a giant statue of Bill Clinton in Bill Clinton Square. And my father took a great deal of pleasure in telling me that that time when he needed a distraction toward the end of his presidency, when everything was going south with regard to Monica Lewinsky, and all of a sudden there was all this military action in former war-torn Yugoslavia. Well, because he needed a distraction from the fact that he had an incredibly young mistress that he'd done some distinctly non-presidential things with, that he was being held accountable for, he launched some military action. Now, this resulted in some people getting some of that American freedom and getting some freedom from oppression that we talk about an awful lot. And as it turns out, the people in Kosovo were very, very grateful. And for that reason, we get Bill Clinton Square. And my father always sort of goes, yeah, if it hadn't been for Monica Lewinsky, might be living in a very different place right about now. But there you go. So like I said, the idea of distractions, not necessarily a partisan thing, just sort of a presidential tradition that's been passed down probably since day one. But we've talked an awful lot about lies. We've talked an awful lot about lies today, and it reminded me of one of the lies that we all choose to believe. The lie about exactly how done your toast is going to get.
Toasters. I like toast. Toasters. They're great, they're toasters, but they have a little turny button thing on the side. It's called a turny button thing. And it lies to us. Oh, yes, it lies. For it has numbers from 1 to 6, and they lie to us. For you set it on 4, and you put toast in on 4, and a bit later, boom, comes up 3. This is 3 toast. This is not 4 toast, 3 toast. Surely hardly done. You have to reset to 5. You put in, boom, comes up burnt. 6 toast, 6 toast. Completely crap, throw it in the bin. Because the toast is in there going, stay down, go for the burn. No pain, no gain.
The great Eddie Izzard telling us about the lies that we choose to believe as told to us by our toaster. You and I will discuss a rather fantastic lie that a guy's girlfriend told him about a college scholarship he was getting and how it has resulted in a massive, massive lawsuit. We'll do that a little later on in the show. Right now, though, let's you and I take a look at the events of today and see what's going on in the news. As you and I discussed earlier, President Trump ordered the Pentagon to create a Space Force as the 6th branch of the military. Dude, you're not even adept at dealing with the aliens we've got. Let's not go looking for more. I think he's vowed to get Mars to pay for it. Okay. Wait times at the California DMV are now topping 5 hours. Yeah, wait times at the California DMV are now topping 5 hours. Other DMVs around the country are trying to figure out how they've been able to be so damn efficient. Oh, God. It's meaningless life suck time that you'll never get back. It's the absolute worst. When I wasn't living in New York City, what I would do, I mean, when you're in New York City, that's it. It's a densely populated place. You get no freedom, no reprieve. But when I needed to go to the DMV in the past, when I moved out to Texas, what I would do is I would drive out to a DMV that was in a much smaller part of town. You drive 45 minutes outside of a major city, well, you're going to save 3 hours in wait time at the DMV. This is what I've discovered. But yeah, wait times at the DMV are now topping 5 hours. Well, phew. Thankfully, everybody working and waiting at the DMV is always in such a fantastic mood. Otherwise, this could cause some real problems, my friend. A new study says that dogs, as it turns out, are smarter than cats. Yeah, dogs are smarter than cats. Scientists say this may lead to a re-evaluation of decades worth of data. Yes, also decades worth of Garfield comic strips. Yeah. Dogs are smarter than cats. That probably explains why feline attempts to kill us, while relentless and never-ending, rarely seem to succeed. Oh, man. This is bad news. I don't know if you like to gather with friends and watch games of some description. I enjoy watching baseball, and if I'm around other Mets fans, I like to get together and watch Mets games with them. Otherwise, I just like to watch it on Twitter. I don't like being around disingenuous sports fans. I would rather, like a buddy of mine, our night guy at one of the stations I work for in 2015, when the Mets were in the World Series, he's like, I'll come over and cheer for the Mets with you. I was like, no. He's like, what do you mean, no? I can't come over? I was like, no, you can't come over. He's like, why? I was like, this is the New York Mets in the World Series. This might never happen again in my lifetime. You're not going to be invested. You're from Oakland. You're an A's fan. I don't need you in my place going, oh, where'd you get those curtains? Anything in the fridge that I can have a bite of? I don't need that. I would rather sit there on Twitter and enjoy it with other people that are just as excited as I am. But when I am around other Mets fans, I love to watch games with them, and that's when you sort of break out the snack trays and stuff. And that, as it turns out, could be a very dangerous business, only because biologists are now saying that you can get norovirus, streptococcus, and even herpes from party dips. Yeah, you can get norovirus, streptococcus, and even herpes from party dips. Wow. And here you were, thinking that you'd never get herpes from that kind of double dipping. A survey found that nearly 2/3 of millennials tip below 20% at restaurants, which is why they're not sorry about doing it. Less than 20%? I don't know. I've always been of the mind that you double the tax, a little more if they were good. And that's it, the end, which usually takes you to about 20%. But yeah, millennials tipping less than 20% at restaurants. which is, I guess, probably why Scott Baio hates millennials. In medical news, doctors have determined that the most effective cure for hiccups is inserting a finger into the butt. Yes, according to doctors, the most effective cure for hiccups is inserting a finger into the butt. And I gotta tell you, actually, this works. I know this works. That's the good news. The bad news is I'm now banned from my local Starbucks. There's a new sex robot that can say no. Yeah, a new sex robot says no if it's not in the mood. Really? Quick, somebody buy one for Chris Hardwick. Kim Kardashian has gone on the record saying she wants President Trump to pardon more drug offenders, which tells us a couple things. Namely that Khloe is not the only one in the family who tends to fall for crackheads. Oh man, we're running out of time. I gotta tell you about this guy who sued his ex-girlfriend. I think it's safe to say that these two will never be getting back together. Back in 2013, a Canadian guy named Eric Abramovitz applied for a scholarship at a music school in Los Angeles. He plays clarinet, and he'd already won a bunch of competitions, and the scholarship would have allowed him to study under one of the best clarinetists in the world. Unfortunately, he got an email that said he'd been rejected. Then over a year later, he ended up auditioning for the same teacher and found out that he'd actually been accepted but never knew it. Turns out that his girlfriend at the time saw an email that said he'd won a full $50,000 scholarship, and she deleted it because she didn't want him to move away. They broke up for unrelated reasons about a year later, and he never knew about the scholarship until he met the teacher. So Eric sued his ex, claiming the scholarship would have set him up to make a lot more money as a musician, and a judge agreed, awarding him $350,000 in damages. He'll probably never see the money because the ex blocked him on social media, disappeared, and no one's been able to track her down. But check him out. He really was a legitimate badass. I know, I didn't necessarily know it was possible to shred at the clarinet, but that guy absolutely does. Amazing, right? So I guess what have we learned today? We've talked primarily today about the truth that we decide to believe, the truth that we choose to believe, the truth that we subject ourselves to. And during times of insecurity, we're only too willing to accept somebody else's version of the truth if it makes us comfortable. Could be a preacher, could be a politician. Could be a girlfriend. Could be a girlfriend telling you that you did not get the clarinet scholarship. And you're sort of okay with that because you know it means you'll be together. Even though you won't be together. And she's going to leave your ass a year later. So what have we learned in talking about the truth today? I guess we've learned that the truth, my friend, is something that is subjective. That whole three sides to every story, your version, someone else's version, and then the version that actually happened. That probably exists. But the truth, while it might be a subjective thing, you always want to make sure that you are making up your own mind about what the truth is. You want to make sure that you're making up your own mind about what the eternity and afterlife will look at. You don't want to fall prey to some preacher that's going to victimize your checkbook so that they can buy a private jet under the premise that they can get you into heaven. You don't want to fall prey to some politician that says some other political party or some other group of people believes differently than you and is going to destroy your way of life, and that you should be afraid of them and they're coming for you. So therefore you should dig deep when they ask you for campaign finance contribution because they promise to keep you safe. You shouldn't take that version of the truth. The version of the truth that you live by should be yours and your own. One that you discern, one that you figure out for yourself, one that allows you to make your way in your world under your terms. You always want to make sure that you decide what the truth is, that you've figured out what your version of the truth that you're going to live by is. Because otherwise, all sorts of horrible things could happen to you. For example, you could miss out on a giant clarinet scholarship. Have yourself a good one.